Viktor Orbán, the leader who turned Hungary's history into political power, from opening hook to the rise of Viktor Orbán. What if the greatest weapon in politics wasn't money or even military power? What if it was history itself? At the very center of Europe lies a nation that has spent centuries fighting to preserve its identity, a country conquered by powerful empires, divided by wars, stripped of territory, and repeatedly forced to live under foreign rule. That nation is Hungary, and in modern times, one political leader has built much of his public image around these historical memories. His name is Viktor Orbán. To many supporters, he is the defender of Hungary's culture, independence, and national identity. To many critics, he is a politician who has used history to strengthen his political position. But before understanding Viktor Orbán, we must first understand the remarkable story of Hungary itself, a nation between empires. For centuries, Hungary stood at one of Europe's most strategic crossroads. Its location brought opportunity, but it also attracted powerful enemies. During the 16th century, the Ottoman Empire conquered large parts of Hungary. For nearly 150 years, warfare, occupation, and destruction became part of everyday life. Many Hungarians believed they were defending not only their homeland, but also the frontier of Christian Europe. When Ottoman rule finally ended, lasting peace did not immediately follow. Hungary became part of the Habsburg Empire. Although life became more stable, many Hungarians felt that their language, traditions, and political influence were increasingly controlled by rulers from outside the country. The struggle had changed. Instead of resisting invading armies, Hungary now faced the challenge of preserving its national identity under foreign rule. The Revolution of 1848. The year 1848 transformed Europe. Across the continent, people demanded freedom, constitutional government, and national independence. Hungary joined this wave of revolution with enormous hope. For a short time, it appeared that independence might finally become reality, but that hope was short-lived. Russian forces intervened to support the Habsburg monarchy, and the Hungarian Revolution was defeated. The consequences reached far beyond the battlefield. Many Hungarians came to believe that no matter how determined their struggle, larger foreign powers could still decide their future. That painful lesson remained deeply rooted in the country's national memory. The century of loss. The 20th century brought even greater challenges. After the First World War, Hungary signed the Treaty of Trianon. The agreement dramatically reduced the country's territory and left millions of ethnic Hungarians living outside the new national borders. For many families, Trianon was far more than a political agreement. It became one of the deepest national tragedies in Hungarian history. Before those wounds could fully heal, the Second World War devastated the country. Occupation, destruction, and immense human suffering once again reshaped Hungarian society. Soon afterward, Hungary entered decades of Soviet influence and communist rule. For many citizens, it felt as though the nation had once again lost control over its own destiny. A nation shaped by memory. Generations of Hungarians grew up hearing stories of lost territory, failed revolutions, foreign occupation, and national survival. History became far more than a collection of dates and events. It became part of everyday identity. It shaped how people understood themselves. It influenced how they viewed the outside world. And eventually, it became one of the most powerful forces in Hungarian politics. The rise of Viktor Orbán. When communist rule collapsed across Eastern Europe, Hungary entered an entirely new political era. Among the young leaders emerging during this historic transition was Viktor Orbán. In the beginning of his political career, Orbán focused on democracy, political freedom, and building a stronger future for Hungary. But over time, his message gradually evolved. Instead of speaking mainly about economic reform, he increasingly emphasized national sovereignty, cultural identity, and Hungary's right to determine its own future. Again and again, he reminded citizens of the foreign powers that had shaped Hungarian history: the Ottomans, the Habsburgs, the Nazis, the Soviet Union. According to Orbán, history offered one clear lesson: Hungary remains strongest only when Hungarians control their own destiny. For millions of voters, that message carried enormous emotional weight. It marked the beginning of a political strategy that would transform modern Hungarian politics. The politics of fear, identity, and national memory. By the time Viktor Orbán returned to power in 2010, his political philosophy had changed significantly. He had come to believe that elections are not won through economic promises alone. People also vote based on identity, security, and the stories they believe about their nation. Orbán recognized that Hungary's history was filled with painful memories: foreign invasions, lost territory, political domination, and repeated struggles for survival. He believed these shared memories could unite the country around a single political vision: a new kind of threat, Unlike previous centuries, Hungary was no longer defending itself against invading armies. Instead, Orbán argued that modern dangers looked very different. He warned that powerful international institutions, foreign-funded organizations, and uncontrolled migration could slowly weaken Hungary's independence. His message was direct. If Hungary wishes to protect its future, it must first protect its identity. For many supporters, this represented a strong defense of national sovereignty. For many critics, however, it marked the beginning of a more confrontational and divisive style of politics. The George Soros controversy. As Orbán's political strategy developed, one individual became central to many government campaigns. That person was George Soros. Born in Hungary, Soros became an internationally known businessman and philanthropist. Through his charitable foundations, he supported projects related to democracy, education, independent journalism, and civil society across numerous countries. Orbán's government argued that organizations supported by Soros promoted policies that conflicted with Hungary's national interests, especially regarding immigration. Large public campaigns portrayed Soros as a symbol of outside influence. Supporters believe these campaigns exposed foreign interference in domestic politics. Critics argued they unfairly focused on one individual and contributed to growing political polarization. The disagreement soon attracted international attention, with governments, universities, journalists, and human rights organizations debating Hungary's political direction. The European migration crisis. In 2015, Europe experienced one of the largest migration movements in modern history. Hundreds of thousands of migrants traveled through the Balkans hoping to reach Western Europe. Because of its geographic location, Hungary became one of the main transit routes. Orbán responded with some of the toughest immigration measures in Europe. His government built border fences, security at crossing points was strengthened, new immigration laws were introduced. Orbán defended these decisions by referring to Hungary's long history. He argued that for centuries, Hungary had protected Europe's borders while preserving its own culture and national identity. Supporters praised the government for acting decisively during a difficult crisis. Opponents argued that historical fears were being used to justify policies based more on division than cooperation. History as a political tool. One of Orbán's greatest political strengths has been his ability to connect current events with historical experience. Rather than discussing today's challenges as isolated problems, he often presents them as part of a much longer national story. Foreign influence, national independence, cultural survival. These themes appear repeatedly throughout his speeches. For many Hungarians, these ideas feel deeply personal because they reflect memories passed down from generation to generation. History is not simply remembered, it is experienced emotionally, and in modern Hungary, those emotions continue to shape political choices. The debate continues. Supporters argue that Orbán has restored confidence, strengthened national identity, and protected Hungary's sovereignty during an uncertain period in European politics. Critics believe that fear, historical symbolism, and national memory have increasingly become powerful political tools that divide society. Whatever conclusion one reaches, one reality remains clear. History is no longer only about the past. In Hungary, it has become one of the most influential forces shaping the national memory. History does not survive only in books. It lives in monuments, museums, national holidays, and the stories a country chooses to tell about itself. In Hungary, this question has become one of the most important political debates of the 21st century. How should the nation remember its past? And who decides which memories deserve the greatest attention? Museums and national memory. One of the best-known historical institutions in Budapest is the House of Terror Museum. The museum documents two of the darkest periods in Hungarian history. First, the years of Nazi occupation, then decades of communist rule under Soviet influence. Its exhibitions focus on dictatorship, political persecution, imprisonment, and the struggle for freedom. For many visitors, the museum serves as a powerful reminder of the suffering endured by ordinary Hungarians. Supporters believe it preserves important historical memories that should never be forgotten. However, not everyone agrees with the way history is presented. Some historians argue that certain exhibitions place greater emphasis on Hungary as a victim victim, while giving less attention to the country's own responsibilities during parts of the Second World War. As a result, discussions about history remain active among scholars, educators, and political leaders, building a new national story. Over time, Viktor Orbán's government promoted a broader interpretation of Hungary's national identity. Rather than focusing only on defeat and suffering, official speeches increasingly celebrated courage, resilience, and national survival. The message was simple: Hungary should not see itself only as a nation that suffered. It should also remember itself as a nation that endured, recovered, and survived. For many citizens, this narrative created a renewed sense of pride. For others, it raised concerns that some difficult chapters of history were being simplified or selectively remembered. The debate continues even today. History and everyday politics. Historical symbols became increasingly visible throughout public life. National anniversaries received greater attention. Historic heroes were celebrated more prominently. Public speeches frequently connected present-day political decisions with important events from Hungary's past. According to Orbán, understanding history helps protect the nation's future. His supporters viewed this approach as strengthening national unity. His critics believed history was becoming more closely connected with political messaging. Regardless of political opinion, history had clearly moved from classrooms into everyday public debate. The political results. Whether praised or criticized, Orbán's political strategy proved remarkably successful. Election after election, his party remained among Hungary's strongest political forces. Supporters described him as a leader who defended national sovereignty, protected traditional values, and resisted outside pressure. Critics argued that increasing political influence over public institutions, media, and historical narratives could weaken democratic balance. These opposing viewpoints continue to shape Hungarian politics today. History as a source of power. Perhaps Viktor Orbán understood something that many political leaders overlook. People do not respond only to policies. They also respond to stories. Stories about identity, stories about sacrifice, stories about survival. When those stories become part of a nation's collective memory, they can influence generations. In Hungary, history is far more than a record of past events. It is a powerful source of identity, emotion, and political influence. And that influence continues to shape
legacy,
the country's future.
power, and the future of Hungary.
More than a decade after returning to power, Viktor Orbán is no longer viewed as simply another European politician. To many supporters, he is the leader who restored Hungary's confidence after years of political and economic uncertainty. To many critics, he is a leader who has gradually expanded political power while reshaping the country's democratic institutions. Most historians agree on one point: the reality is far more complex than either side often presents. A nation divided. Modern Hungary remains deeply divided over one fundamental question: has Viktor Orbán protected the nation, or has he transformed history into a political instrument? Supporters point to stronger border security, greater emphasis on national identity, and policies designed to preserve Hungarian traditions. Critics argue that independent media, opposition parties, and some civil society organizations have faced increasing pressure during his years in office. These competing perspectives continue to shape political debate throughout the country. Hungary and the European Union. Orbán's relationship with the European Union has often been challenging. European institutions have raised concerns about issues including judicial independence, media freedom, and the rule of law. Hungary's government responds that many decisions made in Brussels interfere with the country's sovereign right to govern itself. Orbán has repeatedly argued that every nation should have the freedom to protect its own culture, its borders, and its political system without unnecessary outside influence. Supporters describe this position as a defense of national sovereignty. Critics believe it risks creating greater isolation from Hungary's European partners. A different approach to foreign policy. The war in Ukraine created another major challenge for Europe. While many European governments supported strong sanctions against Russia and increased military assistance to Ukraine, Hungary adopted a more cautious position. Orbán argued that Hungary's first responsibility was protecting its own citizens, economy, and national security. He maintained that avoiding direct involvement served Hungary's long-term interests. This approach generated significant debate across Europe. Some viewed it as a practical foreign policy based on national priorities. Others questioned whether Hungary was moving too far away from the common position of its allies. The power of historical memory. Throughout his political career, Orbán has consistently connected present-day challenges with Hungary's historical experiences. Foreign influence, national independence, cultural identity. These themes appear repeatedly in his speeches. For many Hungarians, such messages carry emotional weight because they echo stories passed down through generations. In Hungary, history is more than a record of past events. It remains an important part of national identity, and it continues to influence political decisions today. Looking looking toward the future. As Hungary moves forward, new generations will inherit both the achievements and the controversies of this era. Some will remember Viktor Orbán as the leader who defended Hungarian sovereignty during uncertain times. Others will remember him as a politician who fundamentally reshaped the country's political system. Whichever interpretation history ultimately accepts, one thing is certain: the conversation about Viktor Orbán's legacy is far from over. It continues with every election, every political debate, and every new chapter in Hungary's history. Every generation tells the story of its nation in a different way. Some remember moments of victory, others remember years of suffering, and political leaders often decide which chapters receive the greatest attention. That is why history is never just about the past. It also shapes the future, a legacy still being written. For Viktor Orbán, history has always been more than a collection of dates and historical events. It has been a political language, a way of explaining today's challenges through yesterday's experiences. Throughout his years in office, he has repeatedly reminded Hungarians of foreign occupations, lost territory, national survival, and the importance of protecting cultural identity. To his supporters, these reminders strengthen patriotism and national unity. To his critics, they risk simplifying complex historical events for political purposes. Both perspectives continue to exist side by side. The debate beyond Hungary. The discussion surrounding Viktor Orbán is no longer limited to Hungary. Across Europe and beyond, political analysts, historians, and policymakers continue to examine his leadership. Some view him as a defender of national sovereignty who challenges centralized decision-making within the European Union. Others argue that his style of government raises important questions about democratic institutions, media independence, and political pluralism. Whatever the conclusion, Orbán has become one of the most influential and most debated political figures in modern Europe. The power of national identity. Perhaps Viktor Orbán's greatest political insight has been understanding one simple truth. People are connected not only by laws or borders, but also by shared memories. Memories of sacrifice, memories of struggle, memories of survival. When citizens believe their history is part of their identity, those memories become powerful. They influence elections, they shape public opinion, and they affect the future direction of a nation. In Hungary, history continues to play exactly that role. The final reflection. History is never completely finished. Each generation interprets it through its own experiences. Some leaders try to change the future. Others first try to reshape how people understand the past. Whether Viktor Orbán is ultimately remembered as the leader who defended Hungary's sovereignty, or as the politician who successfully transformed history into one of his most powerful political tools, will remain a subject of debate for decades to come. Only future generations will decide how this chapter of Hungarian history is remembered. One thing, however, is difficult to deny. Viktor Orbán recognized something many politicians never fully understand. A nation's greatest strength is not found only in its economy, its military, or even its government. Sometimes, its greatest strength lies in its memory. Because history is more than a record of the past. It is a source of identity, a source of unity, a source of emotion, and sometimes a source of political power. Hungary's story is still unfolding. The decisions made today will shape the history of tomorrow, and only time will reveal how the world ultimately remembers Viktor Orbán, the leader who turned Hungary's history into political power. End of documentary.